All right, what's up, guys? So, another episode of Shootin' the Breeze here. Wanted to get into the NBA playoffs, sort of go over some other stuff going on, mostly NBA tonight. Obviously, the second round is underway now. Dallas moved on. They beat the Clippers, and they already started game one last night against Oklahoma City, and they were beaten. Oklahoma City with a dominant win in Game 1, and also the Celtics with a dominant win in Game 1 as well over Cleveland. Before I get into those games and also the other two games, especially the two games that are coming up tonight, I wanted to do a quick shout out also to the Orlando Magic. The Magic were very impressive in the way they were able to stay in that series and the way they played all year. Offensively, they struggled throughout the series, but they were able to find a way to win 3 games and make it a competitive series against, I think, a much better team in Cleveland. I think Paolo Banchero, he's probably becoming one of, if not my favorite player in the league right now. I see a lot of Carmelo Anthony in his game, and I think he's only going to make more and more strides coming into next season, and I think Orlando's going to have a chance to add another piece to make them an even more formidable contender in the East, whether it's Paul George or someone like that. So it'll be interesting to see what Orlando does in this offseason. But, hats off to Orlando. I think they did a great job, and they're going to continue to do that. I think that they're sort of similar in many ways to the way Oklahoma City is built. They're building through the draft. They're getting some good complementary pieces around them. And I think that Orlando's got a good future ahead of them as long as they're able to keep everybody locked up and keeping them with Orlando and not leaving in free agency like they've had issues with in the past. In terms of the second round, Game 1 for the Knicks and the Pacers the other night, the Knicks were able to escape with a 4-point win, even though there were some questionable calls down there at the end, especially the kickball violation, which was not able to be reviewed because it's not a reviewable play in the NBA. It was clearly off Neesmith's hand, not his foot, and so that should have actually been Indiana's ball going down on a break, and so that clearly helped New York because they were able to hit a 3 right after that. Indiana's pace is going to be very difficult for New York to keep up with. New York needs to slow them down. In terms of how they're playing offensively, it seems like for a good portion of the game, they were trying to keep up with the same pace as Indiana, and I just don't think that works. I think that the worst thing you can do with Indiana is try to outrun them and outscore them. You can't do that. You need to slow the pace down. You need to make them play at a slower pace, and I think that gives you a chance. Otherwise, you're going to be sucking wind, especially with how Thibodeau runs much shorter rotations, and his rotation got even tighter with Mitchell Robinson out for the playoffs now with a stress. I'm guessing it's a fracture, but it's being called a stress injury to his left ankle. Robinson's had some knee issues and ankle issues already in the past, so that's worrisome going forward in the future with the Knicks. But you insert Hartenstein into the starting lineup and then go from there. I don't know how tight the rotations are going to be now, but Hartenstein better be ready to play over 35 minutes in my estimation. That's one thing I think the Knicks are going to struggle with is the amount of minutes their starters are playing. They're being asked to do an awful lot and play an awful lot. That's where you wonder if they eventually run out of gas, especially playing against a team that likes to keep the pace up like the Pacers, no pun intended. The Knicks were last in total possessions per game this year. The Pacers were first by a wide margin, I believe by 6 to the next closest team. So this is going to be a contrasting styles type of series, and I think it's going to be who inserts their will and is able to play to their identity throughout that's going to determine a winner. I think it's going to go. I think I had the Knicks in 6 originally. I actually have the Knicks in 7 right now, but that's all going to be predicated upon are they able to slow the game down. That's the biggest thing. And they need to be able to get rebounds. They weren't able to do it as well in the last game. The Pacers were able to hold their own on the glass. So I think that that's going to be one of the big things is who controls the pace of this game. And so tonight I do have the Pacers winning tonight and evening the series going back to Indiana. I think the Pacers are going to make this a very interesting series, and I think the Knicks are going to have to take one in Indianapolis. So I think this has the potential to be probably the funnest series of the playoffs. So stay tuned for that. And then You have Minnesota, who's, to the surprise of, I would say, everyone but Minnesota fans, is up to a 2-0 lead against the defending champion Nuggets. Anthony Edwards has been sensational. He had 43 points in Game 1. He had 27 points in Game 2. Karl Anthony Towns added 27 in Game 2. So I think that the way the Wolves are playing, especially their defense has been suffocating, especially towards Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray shot 3 of 18 in the last game. If they can hold Jamal Murray to those types of numbers, which I don't see them being able to do every game, but if they can keep Jamal Murray's numbers down, then I think you're going to have a great chance to win this series and potentially sweep with the way they're playing. Now, where Denver has that championship pedigree, I don't see Jokic and Murray allowing themselves to be swept. But I do now, where I had Denver winning in 6, I actually think now that Minnesota is going to win this in 6 games. I'm stunned by how this has gone thus far. Minnesota's had a great plan, especially defensively. They've been smothering. They've been physical. They had Jamal Murray so frustrated in the last game that he was throwing towels and throwing heat packs on the court and making money signs at refs. I've never seen a full team like Mike Malone as well as Jamal Murray. Like, that Denver Nuggets team looked flustered. That was the biggest takeaway that I had. So as far as how I see that series going, like I said, I like Minnesota in 6 games now. And tonight, I think Denver takes Game 3 to get back into it, and then I think that Minnesota likely takes Game 4. But I just wanted to touch on the Murray thing. I know he was assessed a $100,000 fine, which was a little surprising that that's all it was. I thought that there would be a suspension for that. But I think that a lot of it is this was such an unprecedented act. I don't remember ever seeing, other than Bob Knight in college throwing the chair on the court, I don't ever remember seeing a player throwing anything on the court before. So it is a little surprising that it was only a fine, but $100,000 is that's pretty. I don't care who you are. That's a pretty big dent. But I was surprised they didn't suspend him. But I'll be interested to see how things are officiated tonight, because Mike Malone was really, really, really adamant, and he was on those refs last game. So it'll be interesting to see if the refs are a little bit more tight with their foul calls, because they were letting them play in the last couple games, and Minnesota's been able to play physically. If Minnesota's not able to play as physical, I still think that Denver's got a chance to get back into this. But I think overall, the way Anthony Edwards is playing right now, Anthony Edwards has been sensational. He and Jalen Brunson have been the 2 MVPs of this postseason, and I think it's by a wide margin. The Knicks don't win last series without Brunson, not even close, and they don't win the other night if Brunson doesn't put up 43 again. That's 3 straight 40-point games for Brunson, and 4 out of his last 5 have been 40-point games. So both he and Brunson, I would say if I were to say who was the MVP of the playoffs, I would probably lean towards Brunson just by how he's been flooding the scoring metrics. But if you look at Anthony Edwards, he's probably the best two-way player in the game right now, and the way he's playing defense is very impressive, especially on Jamal Murray. So I think that the way that series is going, I think that Minnesota's going to advance to their first conference final since 2004. With Kevin Garnett, the year that Garnett won the MVP, and he had Latrell Sprewell, Sam Cassell, Wally Zerbiak, Latrell Sprewell. That was a solid team, and they just ran into that buzzsaw team that was the Lakers that ended up losing in the finals to the Pistons. But Minnesota's never been to the NBA Finals. This might be their best chance, and I think that Minnesota getting to the finals would be interesting, but I also think Oklahoma City is the team to beat. And I think a conference finals between Oklahoma City and Minnesota would be very, very entertaining. You get 2 young squads. Rudy Gobert has been around a while, but relatively young in Minnesota against OKC, who's a very young squad. And I think that would be a very, very fun series out west. And I think it would also signal a changing of the guard out west. You've had usually the Lakers, the Warriors, teams like that, and now seeing Minnesota and Oklahoma City, I think that would be great for the league, where now they're trying to, I don't want to say move away from the Steph Curry, LeBron James era, but they need to start preparing for when those two are not at the top of the league anymore. LeBron's a lot closer to the end than he is the beginning, and so is Steph Curry. I mean, I could see Steph Curry playing until he's around 40, but who's to say what's going to happen? And I think they need to start developing these stars, whether it's Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren. There's a lot of young talent in the NBA that can be promoted, and I think it's the NBA's job to start making sure they strap the rocket ship to these guys and really promote the hell out of them. So, as far as out west, I like Minnesota to win that series, and I also like OKC to beat Dallas. I think OKC, they got good help from their bench. They have depth, in spite of what Keyshawn Johnson said on Undisputed today. I think that Oklahoma City has the depth, and I think that they're going to be too much for Dallas. Dallas, I think, is one piece away from competing in the West, and when you have somebody like Luka and Kyrie Irving locked up, that's for multiple years. I think that you got a chance any year you got two guys like that on your roster. So Dallas is not as far away as I think some people think they are. In terms of out east, I mean, this is the Celtics conference to lose. The only way I see the Celtics losing is if they fall apart. Jason Tatum has not been great, so that's been a little difficult. That will be difficult for the Celtics if he can't start being more consistent offensively. But with the way Derek White is shooting the ball, the Celtics are tough out, even without Porzingis right now. Jaylen Brown's playing well. The whole team seems to be firing on all cylinders, even with Tatum struggling. And Tatum's still finding a way to facilitate, and he's finding a way to make an impact on the game, even when he's not scoring. And I think that's where he's shown growth in his game. And I think it also shows that he's willing to be somebody that's finding ways to win, even if he's not contributing as much in the stat sheet with scoring. And I think that shows the growth, and it shows how they can get over the hump and potentially win a title this year. I also wanted to touch on, I've seen there's a lot of debate in regards to, who would you rather have and build your team around in terms of as the face of your franchise. And it's been discussed between Jason Tatum and Anthony Edwards. Full disclosure, from Massachusetts, lifelong Boston Celtics fan. That being said, give me Anthony Edwards. I really don't have to put much thought into that. I think that Anthony Edwards has that it factor. I think Anthony Edwards has that. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win, and he has that killer mindset that you've seen in Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I'm not saying Tatum doesn't have that, but I think it's to a lesser degree than what we've seen from Anthony Edwards. So I think that if you were to ask me in terms of who I would want to build my team around right now, and I would even say if you were to ask me the rest of these playoffs, who would I want leading my team, I would say that if Tatum was on Minnesota right now, they'd be down 0-2. If Anthony Edwards was on Boston right now over Tatum, the Celtics wouldn't have lost a game yet in the playoffs. That's my opinion, but I that's just how I feel. And maybe I'll feel a certain way if they play each other in the finals. But I can say, as a Celtics fan, I don't want any part of Anthony Edwards right now. But it's going to come down to OKC and Minnesota in my estimation, and I think OKC is just as tough a matchup for the Celtics as well. So there's going to be some intriguing matchups out west for the Celtics if they get through the East, which they should. They should beat Cleveland. I have them beating Cleveland in 5. I just don't think Cleveland has enough. It's the Donovan Mitchell show. And I'm pretty confident Mitchell's probably going to ask out of Cleveland eventually. And I think this could potentially be his last go-around with them. Garland's been struggling. Jared Allen's been hurt. So I just think that the Celtics are too much even without Porzingis. I like them in 5 here. And I like them going up against the Knicks in the conference finals. And I think that's a 5 or 6 game series as well. And the Celtics go to the NBA finals. The Knicks, I think, are going to be a player next year because I have a feeling they're going to make a big move in this offseason and acquire another superstar to pair alongside Brunson. I think there's a chance Randall's gone. I love the addition of OG Anunoby, so I'm hoping they keep him. But I think that if they're able to add a major scoring piece with Brunson, I think that the Knicks become dangerous. So I think the Knicks are a lot closer to contending for a title than people realize. I think they're going to get to their first conference finals in, I believe, over 20 years, maybe 99 or 2000. Correct me in the comments on that. They may have made one a little after, maybe 01 or 03. I can't recall off the top of my head. But this Knicks team is, and it sort of reminds me a little bit of Thibodeau's Bulls teams in 2010 with Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, and Carlos Boozer. Tough-minded, defensive attitude, and I love, and a great point guard, Rose with the Bulls and Brunson with the Knicks. So I think that there's a lot of similarities between those teams, and they've taken on Tibbs' identity. Tibbs obviously won a ring as an assistant with the Celtics in 2008, and that team took on his identity defensively. So I think there's a lot to like about the Knicks moving forward. I just wish that they could get a little bit more depth, and so that way they're not running their starters into the ground come playoff time. I think that's a big issue that they've had and that needs to be addressed. But other than that, I think that the funnest series that we're going to have so far in these playoffs is probably going to be Indiana and the Knicks. I think that's going to be the series to watch. So let me know in the comments what you think on any of the predictions I just made. Do you think I'm crazy on any of it? And also, let me know on some of your thoughts on what I've just gone over in terms of what's going on in the playoffs. Or what I've talked about with the Knicks going into free agency. But I'm going to get out of here now. I just wanted to do a quick playoff show for you guys again. As more comes across with minicamp in the NFL starting, I'll get into that more on next week's show. I know Joe Burrow's starting to get closer to being able to throw with the Bengals, so that'll be interesting, seeing how he'll come back from that wrist surgery. In terms of from Boston fans, rookie minicamp has started, and Drake May is going to be in town for that, so that'll be interesting as well. So let me know in the comments if you guys know of anything you want me to talk about next week. Tune in and listen to our podcast on Saturday on Spotify, The Walsh Boys Show. Please leave us a 5-star rating if you could. It helps us out a lot. We have a Facebook group, The Walsh Boys Show. Be sure to leave us a like on there. Follow me on Twitter at JohnWalsh38, and I'm going to be adding more Substack content as well. So until then, be sure to check out this channel. I'll be putting up shorts throughout the week. If you haven't subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell notification so you know when my son or I post. And until then, be well and take care, guys. Enjoy the playoffs.